Hello and good day. Welcome to our video channel, God's Promises. And today's video will be Book of Exodus 22. Let's get started now. Exodus 22 contains a series of laws that God gave to the Israelites, focusing on various aspects of social justice and personal responsibility. Verse 1 to 4. These verses address the issue of theft, with God providing guidelines for the compensation of those who have had their property stolen. Verse 5 to 6. These verses address the issue of damage caused by livestock, with God providing guidelines for the compensation of those whose property has been damaged by someone else's animals. Verse 7 to 13. These verses address various issues related to borrowing and lending, including the responsibility for borrowed or rented property, the consequences for neglecting to return borrowed property, and the compensation for borrowed property that is lost or damaged. Verse 14 to 15. These verses address the issue of damage caused by fire, with God providing guidelines for the compensation of those whose property has been damaged by fire. Verse 16 to 17. These verses address the issue of seduction, with God providing guidelines for the compensation of a young woman who is seduced and the responsibility of the man who seduces her. Verse 18 to 20. These verses address the issue of witchcraft, with God providing guidelines for the punishment of those who practice witchcraft. Verse 21 to 24. These verses address the issue of oppression of the vulnerable, with God providing guidelines for the fair treatment of foreigners, widows, and orphans. Verse 25 to 27. These verses address the issue of lending money, with God providing guidelines for the fair treatment of borrowers and the consequences for those who take advantage of them. Verse 28 to 31. These verses address various issues related to property rights, including the consequences for stealing or trespassing on someone else's property, the responsibility for the safety of one's animals, and the dedication of firstborn animals to God. The story of Exodus 22 teaches us about the importance of social justice and personal responsibility. God's laws emphasize the value of every human life and the importance of treating others fairly and justly, regardless of their social status. Furthermore, the story highlights the importance of personal responsibility for our actions and the harm they may cause to others. God's laws provide guidelines for the fair treatment of those who have been harmed or wronged by others, emphasizing the importance of restitution and compensation. This story also teaches us about the importance of compassion and care for the vulnerable and oppressed. God's laws provide guidelines for the fair treatment of foreigners, widows, and orphans, emphasizing the importance of compassion and care for those who are most vulnerable in society.